Welcome to another episode of Navigate. This is a place for conversations to help resource you and your teams by taking some of the guesswork out of transition. And in this episode, I've had the privilege of meeting up with a guy who lived and worked in Central Asia during the same time that me and my family were there. And although we were in different countries and our paths never crossed through all those years, we've recently met up now and even collaborate on some work together. We got to know each other even better through this conversation while discussing some themes and topics around core values, identity, and business as mission. Bernie Anderson served as a senior pastor in the U.S. before initiating urban community development work in Ulaanbaator, Mongolia, and building financial partners with World Relief. He currently serves as the Cross-Cultural Leadership Director and a business and nonprofit consultant with Growability Consulting. So I'm thrilled to be able to introduce a new friend to you today, Bernie Anderson. All right, Bernie Anderson, it is so good to have you on Navigate for this episode of Navigate. Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Tim. I'm excited to be here, and I appreciate you taking the time. This is great.
Oh, I'm stoked because we have some of the parallels, I think, that we have in our life and work and ministry will be interesting that may come out in this conversation. One being, of course, both living and working for a number of years in Central Asia. And so I'm just excited. But even all those years we were working in Central Asia, we were still many miles apart. So we know our paths that I can recall never intersected. So this is kind of a getting to know you episode as well. So I'd love for my listeners just to get a sense of who Bernie Anderson is and what you do. And so can you just kind of start with a little bit of your story?
Sure thing. It's funny. We were just came back from a trip, and we were in Europe. Actually, my son and daughter-in-law are in Europe right now, and the distances in Europe as compared to the distances in Central Asia are astounding, aren't they? Like in Europe, you're like in a different country in like 20 minutes, right?
Yeah,
and in Central Asia,
so true. It's so true. Anyway. Yeah. You can, it's not like you can hop on the rail and get to the next, cross the border somewhere. It's
that's right.
Usually it's long, dry, dusty roads, right?
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Well, no, so my background, Tim, is my wife and I were in pastoral ministry for about 13 years. In 2006, we ended up leaving pastoral ministry in the U.S. to go to, as you said, Central Asia. We were in the country of Mongolia. We lived and worked in the capital city of Ulaanbaator for approximately 8 years. Our time there was involved with starting up community development enterprises, doing some work there in the city with students, developing curriculum and leadership development training for the church. So we really enjoyed it. Our time there was great. We loved it. We miss it. In 2014, we came back to the U.S. Lots of different reasons for that we can get into maybe later on. And we were here. We moved to Greenville, South Carolina, where we're currently located. I did a little stint with a international development organization called World Relief. Did some major donor, major gift like fundraising stuff there for a few years. And then in 2018, started working with kind of my own gig, working with a friend of mine who has a sort of boutique consulting company called Growability. And Growability is where I am now. So I work with training leaders and entrepreneurs and cross-cultural workers in how to develop, to flourish in their life and work by developing vision, rhythm, and community. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's me, Tim. I'm married. My wife and I've been married for 30, let's see, here in a month, it'll be 33 years.
Okay.
And then my son is married as well. And like I said, they live here in town, but are actually over in Greece right now.
Okay.
traveling around for their sixth wedding anniversary. And my daughter is out in Colorado, actually out your way. She lives in Denver.
Okay.
And yeah, so that's me.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And so you're also empty nesters too. We're brand new empty nesters. So dealing with some of the grief and loss, of that, celebrating their lives, moving on, and seeing them grow and thrive on their own is fun.
Absolutely.
But it's also when it first started, I was like walking by my daughter's empty bedroom, and kind of those waves of grief come over you.
Yep. I feel that. We had to say we were on the field when our kids ended up moving away. And that was part of our transition. I mean, part of our transition was we just felt like our kids needed us to be at this sort of crucial time in life, needed us to be a little bit closer. And that was definitely a piece to what helped us to decide that, we need to move back at least for a time. So, I can feel that. So,
yeah. Yes, sir. Well, again, some things we have in common. We shifted back from a life overseas in 2016 back to the States. And I have since then grown a coaching practice, was pastoring as well. And I know you were at some point, but then transitioned from kind of part-time pastoring to and part-time coaching, just more recently to full-time coaching. And so the whole entrepreneurial journey and what has prepared us for that journey, and how the areas of mission and entrepreneurship business intersect, some of the tension and conflicts around that, because we are people with a calling and a purpose, and yet sometimes the waters can get muddied in that whole transition. So I'd really love to hear from you. Your story a little bit about that transition and how you see that play out, maybe on the field or just in career shifts. Where do those lines intersect, and how do they kind of get muddied or blurred, at times?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. It's funny, Tim, when I was a pastor, I just had a lot of times when you're in the church, you end up getting kind of a bad taste in your mouth for things like business, right? Right. I was in a place where I would look at some of we were a small church. And so it's always, small churches are funny because in a small church, you're always sort of like I and the big guy thinking, they're just like running it like a business. They're not spiritual. They're not, maybe I'm the only one that's ever done that. I don't know. No, but I don't you're kind of like looking at that. And so there was sort of this sense of like, I don't know. And then when we were on the field, what was interesting, Tim, is that, I knew about Business's Mission. I knew that there were some attempts at Business's Mission in the city where we lived when we were living overseas. The issue is that oftentimes the business piece of it was essentially, hey, we've got like this fake thing that we're doing that's not actually making any money, but it looks like we're running a business, So, and again, this isn't true for everybody. I don't want to be overly negative here, but I think it's important for like people that are on the field to recognize that, hey, if you're going to run a business, run a business. And what I saw, the observation I made was that there was a lot of activity. There was a lot of what looked like it may be a platform, which I kind of despise that word, but there wasn't actually any productivity. There wasn't any business that actually was taking place. Likewise, the mission part was somewhat lacking. So I know that for me, my mind shifted from those early days as a pastor, when I was like, I don't know about business, to where, okay, actually, this is something we need to get our heads around. This is something we need to get our arms around. How do we effectively run a business and do that in a way that's going to be kingdom benefiting, kingdom oriented, developing leaders and doing all the things that we want to do? Because here's the thing, Tim, when I just last week was or 2 weeks ago was in Cambodia. and was talking to some colleagues of mine, former colleagues of mine, when we were in Mongolia. And the interesting thing is that so many missions organizations are using, have historically been using development type work, nonprofit organizations as their means for being in the country. Well, there are a lot of countries that are actually kind of saying, you know what, we don't really want this anymore. The leaders of these countries have read books like Toxic Charity and others that where they're like, hey, we actually want there to be business and business development in our country. And so your best bet for a visa is to come in either as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, as working for someone else who is in a business, and that being a way to actually enter into the country, to actually be there to make disciples. So I've shifted a lot on my perspective on that over the years, for sure.
So as you see what's happening on the ground in some of these places, what are some of the challenges you see as to kind of mutual understanding between, for example, nonprofits, the church, and businesses, in collaboration and partnership? Because I know at times when we were living overseas and working and began to start to test the waters, so to speak, with business's mission. At times we came across a kind of us and them mentality or perspective, because you have the traditional kind of global workers who are doing good work. And then you have the church, the local church, and those who are partnering with the local church in some way. And then you have these, and this was a ways back. So I know things have changed, are probably changing. I hope they're changing. But then you have these kind of strange, where do you put them? Where do you place them? These businesses mission people. So what's going on? What are you seeing as far as trends and things happening there?
Yeah, no, I think, Tim, one of the things that's been just eye-opening for me is to be able to see that as we step in missions, when we step into a culture, what we've historically done is step into a culture and engage with one aspect of that culture. And that primarily is faith. So, I go into a country and it's a Buddhist country, and I'm going to engage with the Buddhism of that country, right? And my Christianity and that Buddhism are going to engage, they're going to clash, they're going to have the conversations, they're going to, have the kinds of things that we do or have done in the past. Oftentimes, if it's a new place and there's evangelism taking place, we engage there. If there's discipleship taking place, we go with the church and we do that. We engage with the faith community. Here's the thing that I've learned. I've learned that there's actually, if we're going to engage with the culture, if as Christians we're going to step into a place and engage culturally, there's actually 5 areas that we need to think about. We need to think about faith, for sure. What is the faith of this place? Is it a secular society? Is it predominantly one religion? Is it a lot of different religions? Is it religious at all? What's the faith aspect of this culture? But there's also things like education. And education is a part of the culture. So who is involved with education? Are we talking to university professors? Are we having meetings with teachers who or administrators in schools? Because that's an important part of the culture. I think arts and entertainment, and I include sports with that, is also a really important part of the culture. So faith, education, arts, entertainment, sports, are we engaging there? Government is another one. That's another really important piece, but also business, so really if those 5 things, faith, education, arts and entertainment, government, and business, when we step into a culture, we want to actually engage in all aspects of that. I believe one of my core beliefs, Tim, is that Jesus is making all things new. And as I think about Jesus making all things new, he's doing that through all of these aspects of culture. And so I want to engage with that. And for me, what I'm seeing, and with a lot of the people that I'm working with in a cross-cultural basis, engaging at all five of those things are important. But the business piece of that is actually really important in much of the world right now. That's not to say that it's, going all the way over to the far side of like crass, consumeristic, capitalistic, like money making stuff. No, but business is a part of. I mean, there's shop owners and people who are starting up little stands that sell whatever, gum and Dixie cups or on the side of the road or whatever. Like those things are really important. And as we as Christians begin to engage with those five aspects of culture, I find that it's just to be really effective. So.
Yeah. And I think measuring results, that was a big thing, like for us when we began to do some work in the business area of business in Central Asia, because we, when we had this coffee shop, for example, and got a, so brick and mortar, you have a place for people to come and to order breakfast, get a coffee, sit with their friends, chat. That in itself cultivates community. And so what kind of, were there always God-centered conversations there? No, we had diplomats come, people from, a lot of expats who were working, who weren't followers of Jesus, but they loved our coffee. They loved a lot about our coffee shop. But we had to always remember that a lot of the deeper work, or the seeds that were being planted and the investment in lives, was kind of more behind the scenes, where our people were working in their cooking classes, for example, and it was mentoring young ladies who were at-risk women who were needing to learn a skill, and in that process, they were getting trained to support them and their kids. They were often widows, or in some kind of really difficult life situation, and then they're being mentored, and there's evangelism taking place, but it's not something you can see as you walk in the door of the coffee shop necessarily, So.
Right. No, it's funny, Tim, as you're talking, I'm reminded, and I'm going to get this quote totally wrong. Right. But Tim Keller mentions this, and it's just one of those things that I read probably in his Every Good Endeavor, I think, is probably the book that I read this in. But he mentions that, as Christians seeking to engage the culture, one of the things that we underestimate is the power of the fall, and the absolute sense in which, the fall devastated everything. And we underestimate that. But then he also said, at the same time, we also underestimate the power of common grace, and that the beauty of God in his creation, and in people, like we miss that. So what I love about what you just described, Tim, is that you can have a place like a coffee shop, a third space of some sort, a business space where people can come in and we begin to see common grace in some really, really beautiful ways, and can point people to that. And as we point people to that, we have the opportunity to point them to Jesus, and it just makes the world of difference for them. And I think makes for a really effective ministry,
Yeah. Good. I love that. I want to transition here, if we can, and because it kind of leads us into this bigger question of transition. And you wrote a blog post that I came across. You and I both are on the Global Trellis team of resource team, I guess you want to call us. So Global Trellis is a great place for folks to go to get resources, especially for global workers to get resourced and get some training opportunities and just some encouragement. Right. And so really want to just give a shout out to Amy Young and Global Trellis as well.
Absolutely.
But you wrote a blog post on that talks about finding your why. And that popped out to me because I do a lot of work in transitions coaching around core values and life purpose discovery and all of that. So again, something we might have in common. You mentioned in that blog post, you said, and I quote you, your what will change, your why remains consistent. Can you unpack that for us a little bit?
Yeah. No, that's now I've got to remember the blog post. I just actually there's another one that just came out today that also is similar, dealing with the whole transition piece. It's funny because transition, Tim, is such, I so appreciate the fact that I'm going to come back to your question, but I just want to say, I appreciate the fact that you are working with people directly in that space, because transition in our work is more real than what we like to recognize. I think when we're young, we think I'm just going to do this forever, right? I'm going to be in this place and I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to do it until I die. At least that was my perspective, both as a pastor and as a cross-cultural worker. I'm not doing either. I'm doing something totally different at midlife, and connected, but different. And I think that, getting back to your question, is really the core of what I mean by that. Your what is going to potentially change. And if you're 25 years old and you're doing something that you just love and you're doing that and you're going to town with it, that's fantastic. And kudos on that. But there are things that are going to happen in your life where, things are going to change and things are going to be different. I think what we have to recognize is that the core of your why is really, that's just the core of who you are. This is my why, is kind of doing the thing that I do that, it may take different forms. It may look different, but I'm going to find my why no matter what I'm doing. A good example. My part of my why is actually training and teaching and equipping individuals, or teaching and training groups of people to experience God, to know their purpose, and to celebrate their differences. And simply put, my why is really about developing community, Tim. Like, one of the things that I absolutely feel like I'm on this earth to do is to help develop communities of people, and to train and equip in that. So here's the thing. Like, I recognized this several years ago, where my why has stayed the same from the time I started pastoring, through my time as a cross-cultural worker, through what I'm doing right now. Working with people and training specifically groups of people to understand their purpose and to celebrate their differences. Those things are ultimately building community. And I realized a few years ago that I've done this my whole life. Like, this has been what my whole life has been about. This is my why. This is why I get up in the morning. This is when I say about the vocation I'm in right now, I love what I do. Yeah. Well, the reason I love what I do isn't because, like, I had to spend 2 hours this morning doing a bunch of administrative work and sending emails and doing all those things. I don't love that. What I do love is bringing people together and seeing community develop. That gets me out of bed in the morning. So that, to me, hopefully answers your question. But to me, the question is not so much, hey, what is your vocation? What do you do? I remember getting asked that by, people as a younger man. So what do you do? Well, I do this thing. Lots of things, but your why is that deeper. Hey, I love seeing people come together in groups of community. Like, that's what I do. That's what I love. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning.
But why is getting clarity around your why so impactful? Because, like you said, you could be functioning in your sweet spot and in your quote unquote why, but not even really realizing it. But then there comes these seasons in life, oftentimes big pivotal, transition seasons where something just, if we do the hard work and go deeper, I think I even read in your bio that you did some of that with a coach. I did as well. You get clarity around the why. And why does that make a difference? Even though I've been functioning in that place, maybe I have, maybe I haven't, but if I have, it still is so impactful to come to this kind of these aha moments of, this is why, this is my purpose and what I've been put on this earth to do.
Yeah. There's two words that come to mind when you ask that question, and that I think this is why I think this is important and why it is so impactful for me. One is the word we've used several times in our conversation here today, Tim, is transition. Transition's inevitable, and when you transition, when I came back from the field, and especially, I don't know if you get a lot of folks listening that are cross-cultural workers, but that day when you come home, you have all of these fears and all of these like, okay, so maybe I'll work at Walmart, that's possible. And I want to be a good follower of Jesus and do that well, but I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what's next. And there's transition. And so there's the kind of fear and trepidation and the pieces that go with that. Knowing your why, it was in that transition where I really nailed down what my why was. That made it so clear as far as what kind of choices I need to make. Where's the path forward? Well, the path forward is in recognizing that, hey, this is what I do. And so, you know what? If I do need to work at Walmart for a while, this is what I do. I'm not going to get excited about getting out of bed in the morning to work at Walmart, but I sure am going to get excited about getting out of bed in the morning to work at Walmart and to bring some of the things that I recognize now as being core to who I am to that job, whatever it is. So I think transition is one. But then I also think that perseverance is the other. So kind of the opposite of that. If you are in a work for a long period of time, it's easy to just do a job and just, I do my job, and to forget, wait, what is the thing that really makes this important for me? What is this that makes this the thing that I'm really I'm excited about this, or I'm passionate about this, and I hate the word passionate, but it's passionate, Tim, in the sense of what is it that I am willing to suffer for, right? Passion means that's the core of that word. What am I willing to suffer for? Why am I willing to suffer for this thing? Well, it's because I understand my why, and I'm willing to suffer for my why because it's that important to me. So for me, transition and perseverance are both really important factors as to this is where knowing your why and being clear on your why will help with both of those things, I think.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. I love that, Bernie. And I think too, that's why a lot of transition work has to do with rediscovering, or maybe discovering kind of for the first time, your, those core values, those things. Again, you use the word passionate, you're most passionate about, what you believe strongly, what are your non-negotiables. That is also such an important piece of getting clarity, because oftentimes, like you said, perseverance, we often go for long periods of time, and there's this drift, and we come to a place of transition, and if we begin reflecting and on our stories and our experience, we may realize that, hey, I really feel I've drifted from those values, the things that are important to me. There's been some drift, and how do I align myself back into what's important in God's plan and for me in this new season moving forward. So I love that.
Well, and the whole process of discovering your why is it's funny because I learned this process and began using this process in a business context and realized, oh my gosh, I'm a pastor again, because it's so pastoral. Like it's such a pastoral thing to be able to sit down with someone. And I don't know, you probably do something similar in your work with this, but to just reflect on those 5 moments in your life where you felt like, this is where I'm supposed to be. Like this is a significant moment, and reflecting on, we have people reflect on 5 different people that were really impactful in your life and why, like, so like talking through those things and, 5 different ways to, that you had an educational experience, whether it be a book or an album or a class or whatever that was really helpful for you. But when someone goes through and really begins to articulate those things, and they begin to articulate like, this is something that was very important for me. There's the why begins to kind of form, and that's just a fun process. And it's fun when you like kind of nail it at the end, and you see people either like have this great big smile on their face, or they like start crying or whatever, like it's great because they see it, and it's a life-changing moment for so many. It was for me. So
yes, likewise for me too. And yeah, like you said, we there may be, different tools and processes we use, but I think again, some of the commonalities in this and working with folks through transition, getting them to reflect on their stories and to derive meaning and purpose from that, you can get so much clarity as to what are some next steps moving forward. And some people say, I forgot this about myself. I need to lean into it. I need to get some more training around it. I need to find this is good. I know that this is not a good fit. I know that these are areas that are good fits for me. So and then kind of just clarifying your message and how you embody that message.
That's right.
For the world. And love that. Yeah. So, that was the question I was actually going to ask you. And I think you already brought it up about reflecting on our stories, but is there anything else that you would say about that? Because that is an important piece that I guess for me, what I have seen is a lot of times we want to leap across the other side of transition. We want to get across as fast as possible to the next thing. And a lot of times we don't engage in that deeper work of reflection. And wow, I think we can really miss out.
Yeah. And it's, I love that we're talking transition here, Tim, because that was such it was both my lowest and highest moments in my whole life was like some of these transitions that took place. And I think what you're saying about reflection is absolutely critical. And actually today or yesterday, I think, on Global Trellis, I had another article that just came out that was, again, very similar to what we're talking about here today. And in the idea that before you transition, you do need to reflect. And one of the things that I like to do, and I teach my clients, is you actually need to do reflection on a regular timed, like, don't wait until, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm supposed to be here anymore. Like, don't wait until then. Like, start now and get into the rhythm of having a regular just time of reflection. There's a tool that I use it's called your career sweet spot. And it's just a reflection tool and an alignment tool to say, all right, is this work that I'm doing right now beneficial for my spiritual health, my relational health, my physical health, my mental and emotional health, and my financial health? Is what I'm doing, like, are there things that I need to shift and adjust and tweak along the way? Or is there enough going on in my life right now that these things are actually unhealthy? And if they're unhealthy, maybe this transition needs to happen sooner than what I think it does. But I think that getting into the habit of reflection is going to make all the difference for us. It has for me. I mean, just regularly thinking through these things in a more systematic way, rather than waiting until like, oh my gosh, I'm in crisis mode and I didn't even realize it. I think that's important.
That's good. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. It brings up a lot. I mean, this whole reflection, time, space to reflect and do that work, it, brings up the whole discernment process. Why it's so important to get clarity, and to discern well through transition when you have to resist some of those default, knee-jerk reactions.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, and just settle into. And that's hard. We recognize that that's hard for people in crisis.
Absolutely.
Or if you're going through a kind of a rug pulled out transition, political unrest, war, visa denied, things like that. I mean, but like you said, if you get into this regular rhythm of reflection,
mm-hmm.
when you do hit these bumps in the road and these obstacles, you're going to have just a bit more clarity, I think, and stability to get through it and to get to the other side with some clarity and to make decisions. Just make
that's right.
daily decisions. Yeah. Good.
Yeah, no, that's so good. So, and it's so like, that's where having someone in your life, Encompass Coaching or Growability, whatever it is, like having that third. I mean, I've just learned to recognize how really crucial it is to have someone that is maybe not your best friend, but who's willing to be like, hey, I'm going to tell you the truth here, and I'm going to show you sort of the tools that you need to like walk through. And I mean, you can do it or not do it, but I just think it's helpful to have sort of that third party, that outside eye on some of these things, especially when you're facing a transition time, because it can be tricky. It can be really tricky.
Sure.
There's just a lot of train wrecks that can happen and have happened that could have been avoided just with some outside eyes. I know our transition. I mean, I had a friend and a coach who has become a friend, I guess. Who, I mean, without him, I think we would have definitely like been more of a train wreck than what we were when we transitioned off the field.
Yeah.
So I'm a fan. So
yeah. And I think this is a great place to just wrap up our conversation today. We want to always resource people, or at least give them some leads and links and ways that they can connect with our guests. And so as we wrap up here, Bernie, tell our listeners how they can connect with you and the work you are doing.
Sure thing. I actually have just started probably a month or two ago, just a weekly, Substack, newsletter thing where it's basically reflections on things I'm reading, things I'm writing, things I'm working on. And I send out every Sunday afternoon at noon Eastern time. So it's bernieanderson.substack.com. So there's that. I do have a website that I have sometimes for a year or two very consistently blogged at, and then other times like right now have been a little bit slower, but that's just bernieanderson.com. And then my business is Growability, so growability.com/coach, and you can go there and check out what all is involved with the consulting work that I do with Growability. So that's and I'm random social media things, but I'm finding myself using that less and less here than what I used to. So those are probably the best places. So
okay. Great. Well, we'll make sure we get those links and resources for people in the show notes out there so people can connect with you. I just love to hear what you're doing, and I want to hear more. So this conversation today, I hope is just the beginning. Maybe we can reconnect here and do something else down the road. But I love our collaboration, the ways we're working together and on the global trellis team, and
absolutely.
So, hey, Bernie, thank you for joining me. I appreciate your time today and look forward to continuing the conversation.
Likewise, Tim. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
What is this transition bringing up for you? Are you engaging with the process not merely to move to the next thing, but to really reflect on what the past means in terms of the present and the future, and how you can more strategically align yourself with what's most important moving forward in terms of your personal values, beliefs, passions, and where you want to spend your time? If you're in a season of realignment or think you might be, reach out to me at encompasslifecoaching.com to learn more about the coaching packages I offer and engage in a season of transitions coaching. That's a wrap for this episode of Navigate. I've been your host, Tim Austin, and if you appreciate these conversations, do us a favor by giving us a shout out on social media and giving us a quick review on your favorite podcast listening platform, and I'll catch you next time.